I'm Michelle Graves, your host on today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm glad to have you here. Now, at The Power of Money, we are interested in three things happening. First, we want you to get the necessary education so that you and your family can make the decisions that will impact positively on you in your financial life. The second thing is that you be empowered to prosper. I only want the best for you. And you can only get that if you have education and then the drive to make it happen. And the third thing that is so important to me is that you recognize that life is more than a journey and that you be energized so that you can begin to participate in the truly joyous experience of living. So here's to empowerment, here's to education, and here's to energy. I'm Michelle Graves, your host, Power of Money, and here we go. And welcome to today's segment of The Power of Money. As always, I'm your host, Michelle Graves, affectionately known for over 30 years, believe it or not, as the Money Lady. And you know my commitment, if you've been a faithful viewer throughout the United States, you know my commitment to providing you with timely and relevant information that can help you and your family to prosper during these challenging times. We're always going to have challenging times, but it just seems like so much is happening now and at the same time, and therefore the press is on to make sure that you get good, solid information. Today's segment is no different. I have as my guest for the next hour a gentleman who is in a field that we find very challenging to talk about, but it is a reality. Just like you're born to live, there is going to come a time when you are going to cease breathing on earth and transition into death. And so on today's segment of The Power of Money, I am going to be shifting my focus from the entrepreneur to deal with this very relevant topic, which is dealing with death, dealing with the funeral industry, and how you're going to cope. My next segment after this interview with this marvelous gentleman who's so graciously consented to come on, I'm going to be talking about how to get through grieving, because many people are going through grieving from the loss of a loved one or a friend or a coworker, and we do know that's very serious. So I'm going to address those two topics on my shows today. But without getting into a lot more detail, because I think you want to get to the nuts and bolts of what we are on here today, I'm going to be introducing my next guest, who is Jed Dunnichay, and he is a director of community development and a funeral director. Yeah, you do have to be licensed, folks. You cannot be out here doing whatever you want. With Newcomer Funeral Service Group, they are a national funeral home organization with facilities throughout the United States, and I thought he would be an appropriate person for me to delve into this subject. Please sit down. If you've never dealt with death in your family, just keep living. It's going to come your way, and you want to at least be prepared for planning and having things in order so that it doesn't come as a shock. So, good morning.
Good morning to you, Michelle.
I'm so glad to meet you and to have you here.
Thank you.
So, where do we want to begin? Let's begin by what makes you an authority on this industry?
Well, dating back to my childhood, I was born and raised in this business, coming from a family of funeral directors.
Oh my goodness, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I've been licensed since 1976, and
that's long enough.
Yeah, I started working when I was a child in this business.
Did you? With your family?
With my family.
The funeral industry has tended to be a family industry, would you say, historically?
Historically, it has, absolutely.
Okay, so you started off in the business as a child and pretty much wanted to do this.
Pretty much wanted to do this my entire life.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So may I ask you, the industry has changed in what ways, would you say?
Well, it's changed in several ways. I think when you go back at least 100 years, it was slow to change. And then we have had more changes in the last 20 years than we had in the previous 100 years. And a lot of it has to do with the changing demographics of our society today here in the United States. changing beliefs in religion, changing demographics as it relates to income, and the family unit as a whole.
What do you see happening? What type of change? What do you see happening?
Well, I think that we're seeing obviously more and more cremation in our industry, and that's good.
Okay.
Because with cremation comes more flexibility and more options for families. And I've even seen that evolve and change over the course of the last 10 years.
With cremation, would you mind telling our viewers what is cremation? Because there is perhaps a knowledge level you may have that they don't have.
Right. Well, cremation is essentially just a form of disposition. Like burial, you have cremation.
Okay.
And so the families have the choice of one or the other. Burial has been historically the main choice because the family unit has stayed intact in our communities. In many of the communities that we serve, we have the same family going back 3 or 4 generations.
My goodness. So with cremation, that's a newer trend?
It is. Again, as we become more mobile in our society, the family unit has starting to spread out, so to speak.
Okay.
And it is not uncommon to have children of the parents living in all parts of the country.
This is true.
So we become more mobile, and so they don't have a tie to a cemetery or a church or a funeral home in those cities in which they live in currently. And so it becomes easier to make a different choice.
Okay, so you find that, of course, that's a part of that demographic shift where children marry where they work, and many of them are all over the place, and globally all over the place as well.
Absolutely.
So that's what you're dealing with as well. So you've had the background, you've been in the industry entrenched going back to childhood with generational family, and so now here we are today. What do you feel is the greatest challenge facing families who are now dealing with the demise of a parent or a brother or a sister? What are you finding?
Well, I think that, again, when I was growing up in the profession, you basically had 2 choices, whether you wanted the funeral in the morning or if you wanted it in the afternoon. That was it. They were both going to be identical, but it's just a time of day. But in today's time, we meet with several thousand families annually in our company.
Oh my goodness, yes you would.
No 2 are alike.
No 2 are alike.
No 2 are alike. And so that creates challenges unto itself from a logistic and a facilitatory type of event to where, we have to be able to be flexible to meet the needs of our community. We have to be able to provide some creativity as we talk and visit with our families that we serve. And then we also have to be really good listeners because people know what they don't want, but they're not certain on what they do want. But
or
when
even
they
what's
see
available.
Or what's available.
Right.
And I've always said that words have no meaning until people put meanings to words. And in our profession, we use words that people are not accustomed to using, like personalization, like memorialization, like those things that I know what they mean to me, but they may not mean the same to you.
Right.
So we have to be better communicators.
So are you finding that families want a unique experience in handling the actual funeralization? I
think in most parts true. They want an experience, but they want a meaningful experience.
Okay.
I think that might be a more accurate word. They want something that's going to make their experience not only personal, but have meaning.
Okay. So to that extent, are you all more involved with that meaningful creation? Because that takes time.
Well, it does take time. Going back to what I said earlier as it relates to facilitating. And so you have to be able to really discern what the family's needing and wanting. And going back to cremation, you know, the death may happen today, but we may not have that ceremony for several weeks.
My goodness, because of what?
Well, because we're waiting on a child to come in from Seattle.
Oh
or,
my gosh, okay,
or from
okay,
Europe or,
okay.
or wherever. So you've got travel and logistics
Okay.
involved with that.
So because of the, I don't want to use the harsh term disintegration of the family unit, but it does appear that when you have people all over and they come together for this going away celebration.
Right.
And it could be pulling people in, could be a couple of weeks.
Well, it does. And one needs to remember that death never occurs when it's supposed to.
Isn't that profound?
And so they, you know, I've even heard families say, well, it's awfully inconvenient.
Awfully inconvenient.
And
really?
And I've always had to scratch my head
I
over
know,
that.
like, really?
Yeah, well, it's inconvenient.
It's
I have to admit,
inconvenient.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, truthfully, people live their lives.
They do.
And that's the world of the living.
Correct.
But when the death angel intrudes, it is perceived on some levels as an intrusion, which is noun what?
Well, you know, going back, it's easy to talk about earlier in my career, but going back when the death occurs, we would have visitations and people gathering for days.
Oh my gosh,
and days,
yes.
To where everybody stops and grieves and mourns and approaches it more holistically,
I
maybe
think so.
even more healthy.
And the cars pulling over when the funeral
Absolutely.
processional.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember that. Cars did not just zoom by.
They didn't zoom by.
They
and
pulled
everybody,
over.
But the whole community paused.
Yes.
And in that regard, it has changed.
I was curious about that as well. So we're looking at a demographic shift, which means
Right.
that people are everywhere. Then we're looking at cultural, because
Absolutely.
we have now people that are immigrating and have immigrated, this goes back generations, from different countries, and do they want to go back home?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. I knew you were going to say that.
Absolutely. We are in situations to where we will transfer their loved one wherever that may be in far off parts of the country, and we do it every week. And we have to be able to work with consulates and
From other countries.
different
Yes.
governments.
Oh my goodness, because you're moving a body.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
And that's a little bit more difficult than it sounds.
Oh, I don't even, I can only imagine trying to transport a casket. Now, are you saying they also want to, in those cultures, do they want to be cremated?
Many cultures do.
They
Absolutely.
do? Okay. So you have to transport that urn, or do you transport the body?
We do both.
You do both.
Absolutely.
So to another funeral facility in another country?
Yes.
Okay, that is very, very interesting. So you all are actually networkers into all kinds of other countries
We are.
as a part of what you do.
We go all over the world.
My goodness. I remember many years ago, I housed a young woman from South Africa who was the first licensed mortician from South Africa. She graduated from the Cincinnati College
Absolutely.
of mortuary, and she
Yes.
was the first from her family. They had a mortuary, but it was not licensed and under the same protocol as the United States. Have you run into that often?
Well, we have. I think that as our society continues to evolve and grow, we have more cultures represented. And so those cultures that your friend would see
Yes.
from Africa, we actually have them present in our communities today because people now have migrated over to the United States, and with them comes their beliefs and
Right.
traditions.
That is
And so we have
something.
to be able to honor those beliefs and those traditions in our profession.
I was surprised. I talked to a woman who is from Poland, and an older woman, and in the course of talking, I asked her, I said, when you transition, where do you want to? She said, I'm going home. She said, I'm going back to Poland.
That's where the heart is.
She said, I'm going home to my family. And it just impacted me in a deep way, because I said, that whole connector about family and them wanting to go back to their place of birth and beginnings. Despite her being a citizen of this country for many, many years, her roots were still in Poland. And that's what she wanted to do.
Yes, we had a situation earlier this year, and actually it was in Poland.
Okay.
And the individual passed here in the United States, but all of his family was over in Poland. And what we did was to have a mass here.
Okay.
And at the same time, his family was having a mass in Poland for his funeral.
Okay.
And then we sent him over to Poland for his burial.
So
but the family wanted everything to go on at the same time for his family over there.
So how did you, with technology today, what did you do? How did you do this? Did you allow them to simulcast, or?
Well, what we did, we knew that over here there's a 6-hour difference.
Yes.
And so at noon we were having Mass, or at 10 we were having Mass, and they were having it 6 hours, later on that day.
Yes, later.
So it was more like, 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
And they were all gathered at the
same time.
That is very powerful. Now, was that something that you suggested in your capacity as a funeral home, or was that something the family desired as a meaningful expression?
It was a mutual decision.
Okay.
We started
so
talking,
unique.
and that goes back to what we were talking about, being good listeners and better communicators, is that we discerned that was going to make a difference and have some meaning for the surviving parents in Poland.
I'm sure it would have and did. I'm sure it would have and did. Right. That's a beautiful story. That is. What do you find when you sit down with people? Give me your I guess your bucket list of things people need to know before they come to see you.
Well, there's lots of information. Imagine doing a wedding.
Now
Scheduling a wedding.
Oh, God.
Do a wedding and think about all the things that you have to decide upon. And it usually takes a year to do that.
A well-planned wedding does take a year.
Well, I don't want to make the comparison, but there's just as many details associated with a funeral today or cremation today as a wedding.
Well, can you enumerate some of those?
Well, absolutely. Today, families are wanting receptions after the funeral ceremony, so you have to facilitate that. There are people that they want to invite. There are memorial folders, like invitations. Everything are called different things, but they serve the same purpose.
Okay.
And
to
so,
create a lasting memory for the family.
And unless the family has pre-planned this down the road, then we have to make all of those decisions within a matter of days.
That is what I find totally unique about your industry. You only have a narrow window of opportunity to plan something that's going to live with people forever. Forever. A bad funeral is just as memorable as a good one.
Unlike weddings, you get one chance to do this right.
You only get one chance.
That's the difference between the two.
Okay.
And so, you hit the nail squarely on the head, is that this is not a dress rehearsal. We have to get it right. There's days that we do it really, really good.
Okay.
And then there's days that we might miss that a little
bit.
But for the most part, you have to get it right every time.
I definitely think your reputation is riding on that.
That's all that it is.
Get it right.
And really, in our profession, it is attention to detail.
Okay. Planning.
Planning ahead. And what I've always, when I talk to different groups, we plan for the what ifs. We buy insurance for our homes. We buy insurance for our cars. We buy insurance for life.
Yes.
what's going to happen. But we also can buy insurance for death.
Talk about that to me.
Well, in our profession, what is a growing popularity in our communities today, going back to the mobility of our communities, people want to be able to take care of that detail because they realize that they're not immortal, that the death will occur. So they want everything to be taken care of as they wish. And so they will come into one of our facilities and meet with one of our professionals and go through that laundry list without the emotion, and that eliminates the financial burden to their families. It eliminates the what it does. It allows their family to focus on what's important, which is being with family and being with friends and reflecting and remembering the life that had lived, opposed to worrying about
money,
all these details, and worrying about money and worrying about the burden. And it's frankly a great gift that one could leave to their survivors.
I think it is.
It's a wonderful gift.
We were talking about just some of the things people need to know when they come to see you, so let's continue that.
Let's do. I say that there's two areas. One is the important information. That's the information that relates to you, your life. And then there's the necessary information. That's the information that we need for legal documents, such as a certified copy of the death certificate.
And it only comes from the funeral home?
That is correct.
My goodness.
And what this information is the death certificate. We take this document to a certifying physician or coroner that will create the cause of death and to turn it into a legal document.
That is then filed with the state of domicile?
That's correct. That is correct. And you need this document to conduct the closing business of that person who has passed, like closing bank accounts, transferring titles of cars, insurance policies to get those forwarded, changing of real estate, any type of financial business that individual have. They need a certified copy of the death certificate to prove that this person has passed.
So whether you like it or not, you're going to cross paths. Now viewers, listen to me while I tell you this. This is important. Whether a person likes you all or not, they're going to have to go by your bush.
Sooner or later.
Sooner or later.
Sooner or later.
Because you are, by law, authorized to complete those certificates.
That is correct.
That's major.
Well, and it is. And then the other document that we have is what we call a burial transit permit. Which is if there is going to be a burial, then there has to be a permit that gives us the authority and the ability to transfer that person from one county, from one state, from one country to another.
Really?
And then
is that by custom or is that by law?
It's by law.
Oh my gosh, okay, all right.
And then if there's cremation, the same thing applies.
Because I know and this may be anecdotal, I don't know, but they say you just can't throw remains out into the ocean anymore, which his dad wanted his cremains to be disposed.
Well, you're not supposed to.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You're not supposed to. They're, by law, they have to be within, usually it's 3 miles. And in some places it might be further out depending on the situation, but usually it's 3 to 5 miles.
For the family to dispose of those ashes.
Yeah, the ashes, and that's a good point as well, is that you can take them home. And put them on a bookshelf or a place of significance within the home. You can scatter them at a meaningful place. You can bury them in a cemetery or in some type of designated ground burial, or you can inurn them in what we call a columbarium, which is like a mausoleum but dedicated to cremated remains. I
see a lot of that activity.
It's very common
today.
The one word of caution that I might, it may sound romantic to scatter the ashes, but I always encourage families, and so do our professionals, is to retain a portion and have place of remembrance. That's what our cemeteries are for, and that's not just for this generation, but think about the generations to come.
That's very important. So when they come in and sit down before you, Mr. Dunnichay, and they say, my mother crossed over, do you all pick up the body?
Yes, we do.
You do pick up the body?
We do.
So if they haven't identified a funeral home, who picks the body up from the nursing facility or the hospital?
Well, if it is in a health facility,
yes,
the staff there will ask them, you need to choose a funeral home.
Okay.
In most cases, they may ask that, depending on the situation, the person is going into hospice care, where we know what the future holds. They will say, what funeral home do you want us to use?
Okay.
So we try to at least get that ahead of time. But if someone passes unexpectedly or in a hospital, they will say, what funeral home do you wish to use?
To the family or to the person?
To the family,
Okay.
to the survivors. Then they need to make a decision on who to call.
Who to call, yeah.
And those decisions are based on a number of things, whether it's reputation, whether it is past history with a provider. There's a host of reasons why.
So at the point that you come, because I actually was physically in a situation where a very dear friend of mine, her mother passed in a facility, and we were both there. She called me and I shifted gears and went to be with her, and literally her mother was still warm. And we prayed over her, and because it's painful. It's very painful to see that. And so they called the funeral home that the mother was going to use, and the owner actually, he came with a gurney, and I did not know that. I did not know you all, I don't know what I thought, but I did not know where the body went. If they were in a hospital, you all go into hospitals as well?
Absolutely. And in most cases, it is our staff that will bring someone's loved one into our care.
Okay.
And that is a real important event.
Yes, it is. He treated her gently and with compassion, and then did not allow her facial features. He covered her with like a linen cloth or something.
Right.
And it was very, very moving.
It can be extremely moving.
Yes, it was very, very, and he was very gentle. I'm just saying that the experience took me to another level. Viewers, you can't know everything, including this. Now, having said that, that was so the body is transported where?
It's brought back to one of our facilities for preparation.
Okay.
If that's what we're going to do, and or cremation, if that's what we're going to do. That will depend on the family's choice.
So does the coroner, when does the coroner get involved?
Well, the coroner would be involved when it is a tragic death.
Okay.
Then the coroner is involved.
They come and get the body at that time?
Yes.
Okay, they do. Okay.
And then also when there is not a certifying physician, someone could pass at home. Right. And not be under doctor's care, then the coroner's called. Okay. And the coroner's called for obvious reasons. There are so many byproducts of what we do, but the number one thing in our profession is your peace of mind. Everything is about peace of mind. Yes, yes. And so that's the reason why we try to instill proper chain of custody. Okay. Documentation for bringing someone into our care, making sure that everything is proper, and to provide that same level of dignity and respect that the family has provided their loved one throughout their life.
That's very, very powerful. So you do that, and then at what point do you get involved with the family? And who is family today? Blended families. Traditional families. I mean, when you say we get involved, what does that look like?
Well,
I have to say that.
Well, it could be interesting.
Yeah, I bet.
In today's dynamics with families. But it can, in our business, there's what I call the emotional reward. And one of the things that come out of this is it is really a privilege to be with a family at that very special time.
I think it is.
And we become very involved in that. And today's families, we can have one survivor in an arrangement room, or we can have 20.
My goodness.
You just never know.
Okay.
And
does that complicate, though, the decision making when you have a large group?
Well, it can. And of course, you might get into some dysfunctional issues, but that goes with the territory.
That does.
Yeah,
that does.
goes
Because
with the
everybody
territory.
responds to death differently.
Well, they do, and keeping in mind that you experience all kinds of different emotions when someone passes, and you can be experiencing that emotion at any given time, and that's going to be a very elevated experience for that person, whether it's anger, whether it's guilt, whether they're bargaining with themselves. There's all kinds of things that will come into play, and that's the reason why our professionals need to recognize that and know where that person is. And no two people will grieve at the same time, at the same way. Everybody is different.
That is so powerful because the grief experience impacts on each and every one of us
Absolutely.
differently. But we will experience it.
You can run, but you can't hide.
You cannot hide. It's going to look you in the face.
Absolutely. And I've had to sit on the other side of the table, and I've had to make arrangements for my loved ones. And even it was a humbling experience for me the first time that I had to go through it.
I'm sure it was.
Because the fact I thought I knew everything, about this business.
Yes, I
and
know.
growing up in the business, and I realized how much I really didn't know.
Right.
And if it wasn't for my funeral director to get me through that, and the funeral director that I used, he knew me very well. But he treated me just like he would treat any other
family member. That is so beautiful.
Absolutely. And it was, and to me, that was my aha moment as it relates to this profession. And again, it was very humbling.
I'm sure it was.
And it was like the old adage, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. Well, that was that moment.
That I hear. So a person, when they sit down, and I know under the FTC guidelines,
Right.
and you may want to talk to our viewers about that. Let's talk about the money
Let's do that.
and how does this thing get paid?
Right, right. As it's an interesting business because you do have the business side.
Yes, you do.
We have overhead. We have if you
Staff.
want staff, professional,
Yes,
top quality
top
staff.
professionals. Yeah.
Everything comes at a price, but you also have a balance because you are dealing with the sensitivity of one's life. So we try to mirror the two. And expenses are, our whole company was based on high quality service at an affordable price.
Okay.
And so we try to honor that in our communities, and that's what we base our core values on.
Okay, which is high quality at an affordable price. What is your definition of affordability?
Well, without getting too specific,
Okay.
Our service charge for a traditional burial is $26.95.
Are you serious?
Yes,
Is that low?
that's very low.
That's very low.
Yeah, we are usually
Are you using
half
a
the price of everybody.
casket?
No, this is just for our professional services.
Okay, for your service, Lou.
Yes, because we compare the prices of other providers. Because when families call us,
Yes.
or when they talk to a caregiver at a hospital, guess what the first words are out of their mouth?
What?
How much is this going to cost?
Well, because people are pressed today.
They are pressed today.
I mean, I don't care what the media hype is, money is not flowing like that
No,
for
it
certain
isn't.
levels of our community.
No, No. So
It's tough.
we try to recognize that, and that's the reason why we're historically half the price of other
Okay.
providers in our communities.
For the same type of service.
Apples to apples
Apples to
comparison.
apples. If we lined them up, there you are.
And the reason why we use the service charge, Michelle, is that is listed on GPLs,
Okay.
and it is an apples to apples comparison.
Okay.
Products vary. There's all kinds of white caskets.
Yes.
There's all kinds
Oh, yes.
of, brown urns.
Yes.
There's all kinds of that. So it's hard to make a comparison with that. So we make a comparison just with what we know, and that's our service charge.
And what does that service charge include?
That service charge will include bringing the loved one into our care.
Okay.
It will include any type of preparation work, such as embalming, any type of restoration work that would need to be made, cosmetics for the
Yes.
ladies, hair. In a burial situation, it will include the casketing and dressing
Okay.
of the loved one and properly positioning them to where it has a
Restful
meaningful
position.
presentation. It will include our facilities for any type of gathering or visitation that you may have. It will
No,
include,
that's included?
yes, it will
Oh my
include
goodness,
our
okay.
facilities for the funeral
Okay.
ceremony and the staff.
Mm-hmm.
It will include a hearse to go to the cemetery.
Okay.
And then the number one question families will ask, it also includes a service vehicle. And they want to know what in the world's a service vehicle. And that's the vehicle that we use to transport flowers back and forth.
Right.
It's the vehicle that we use to get all these documents signed by the proper people. And then we have full-time courier on staff at our facilities that facilitate all that so there's no delay on getting these certified copies of
Okay.
death so that they can proceed with
Because
their
I know
business.
that can be frustrating. I
It's very
experienced
frustrating.
that in the transition of a loved one in Texas, and we needed to get that certified copy for the insurance company
Exactly.
to release proceeds, and they want an original.
That's right.
They don't want a Xerox copy.
That is correct.
And we were into 3 weeks still waiting. And I finally did make a call, which is unusual because I understand your industry. And I said, I need you to do that today. And things changed, and it did happen.
Well, we have, in the communities in which we operate, we have wonderful relationships
Okay.
with the doctors and the coroners.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind there are certain things that are beyond our control. But under normal circumstances, we can make phone calls on behalf of the family.
Yes.
We will even send a member of our staff just to go and sit in the waiting room of the doctor's office.
To get the signatures.
Waiting for that
Okay.
signature
Right,
to
right.
help that family along.
That's very nice to know.
Well, and if there's any delay,
Yes.
we need to communicate that to the family so they're aware that
Of what is going on.
Absolutely. It's all about communication.
Okay.
in what
So
we do.
you all have that flat rate, and then you have, of course, customization, as I call it, a base
Right.
price, and then for add-ons and things that they would want
Right.
as well to make things
Right.
unique and special.
Right. You will, a lot of families will want flowers. So you
Okay.
have that. They'll want some type of paper product, and that being a register book, memorial folders, programs,
Okay.
whatever that. Remember when I talked earlier about the comparison between a wedding and a funeral?
Yes, well,
it's
it's the same,
thing.
right.
We may call it something different, but it's the same thing.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of variables that come into play. You may want to release doves or have a bagpipes or whatever the case may be. A reception. We recently changed our name to reflect what we do, which is cremations, funerals, and receptions, which is a big and upcoming thing in our
Is it?
profession. Absolutely, yes.
Where families want to do what are called repasses.
Yes,
Yes.
that's exactly right.
After the ceremony, where they can meet with each other.
Continue to fellowship,
Yes.
break bread, tell
Yes,
stories,
yes,
reflect in a
yes,
more
yes.
relaxed environment. The event is over now. We paid our respects, and it's time to to gather as a community, to gather as a family, and to reflect and to enjoy each other.
I think that's beautiful.
It's healthy too.
I think it's very healthy. So you do all of that. You make sure that all I's are dotted, T's crossed with regard to the transition of this individual.
That is correct.
What would you say is the most overlooked area for consumers wanting to use your service when they sit down? What is, from your experience, the most overlooked area? Again.
Well, again, everybody is a little different.
Okay.
Families will walk into our facilities and they may be focused on one thing, whether it's the death certificate or whether it's the flowers or whether it's the reception. We have to figure out what that is.
Okay.
Now, as far as being overlooked, there's no two funerals that are alike today. There's no two ceremonies that are alike today. You know, it's really hard to pinpoint. Okay. We kind of take the approach that we assume everything's overlooked. And it's our job to bring it to the forefront and to educate families on what their options are and let them say no. They need to know what they're going to say no or say yes to.
Right.
And to be clear about that.
So is there, given the short window of time, how do families typically pay for funeralization?
Well, they can pay it by cash.
Okay, cash works.
Cash still works good. A lot of families use their credit cards.
They pay by credit card.
They'll just throw their credit cards. If there's 4 children, they just throw their credit cards and say, take care of this. But the number one is insurance.
Right, okay.
And that, again, going back to when we were using the word pre-planning ahead of time, it is that facility or that instrument, that insurance policy that pays for that. It's all done.
So is there, and this is a question, and viewers, by the way, I am a strong proponent of pre-planning. It's going to come. So take the steps now. You know who you want to handle your affairs. Go on and get those things in place now. I'm so serious. You can do this and it's over. You can move on. So I wanted to say that because a lot of people have mixed feelings about pre-planning, and I am a strong proponent of pre-planning, getting everything in order.
Well, it is, again, we get everything else in our lives in order.
Don't we? But why do we get stuck on that one?
You know, we look, I'll use the baby boomers as a comparison.
Okay.
You stop and look at what the baby boomers, the influence that they have or we have had.
Yeah, because I'm a baby boomer. We're both baby boomers.
We're both there. And the different industries that we have had a major influence over.
Yes, we have.
Whether it's Gerber Foods or Levi Jeans or Chevrolets or whatever the case may be. College.
Right.
And then guess where? Retirement.
Retirement.
And now, guess where our next step is? It's the inevitable.
Yes, it's inevitable.
Because this is transitional. And so we have to be prepared for that. And that is just a big a part of your financial planning as anything else is.
I totally agree. I know I put all of my mother's affairs in order several years ago with a facility in Cincinnati, very, very careful. And everything's done, even down to opening and closing.
Of the grave?
Everything, the cemetery, which is not a part of. Would you tell our viewers that cemeteries are a different animal entirely?
They are. Cemeteries, they're a separate entity.
Yes, they are.
And so they have their charges. People need to pay for a grave. They need to pay, and you referred to it earlier, you called it the opening and closing.
Opening and closing.
That is what we refer to as the physical digging of that grave and then closing that grave after the burial. And those fees can range anywhere from $500 up to a couple of $1,000 for that alone. And
that does not include the headstone.
Does not include any type of permanent memorialization, whether it's a marker, headstone, mausoleum, whatever that situation may be.
That's something that many people don't know,
They don't know.
and that can come as a sticker shock
Right.
when they realize they have to pay that in addition to paying the funeral facility.
Right. What we try to encourage
Okay.
and is to have families come in, sit down for a consultation.
Okay.
There is no charge for that. Ask these questions, and we can walk you through the choices that you may have. We'll walk you through any type of budget issues. We can set you up on a payment plan
Okay.
to where you can prepay. where you can do a
That's
single
wonderful.
payment all the way up to
That's-
10 years.
A 10-year payment commitment. That's wonderful. So there really isn't any excuse if you pre-plan and for any surprises, correct?
Correct.
That's my goal, which is that the most vulnerable period in your life, you don't have to deal with the agony of selecting a casket if that's what you choose. You can get all of that worked out right up front. And then hopefully you won't have a family member that's screaming about the casket at that time, but normally those things are pretty solidified, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I would say 90% of the time.
Okay.
That might be a little bit aggressive, but for the most part, if the person is going to take the time and energy to sit down and go through the exercise, they're going to pick and select those important elements, such
That they
as a
want.
casket
Yes.
or an urn or whatever the case
Right,
may be.
Right, right. Now, is there a law in the state of Ohio now where you have to sign an authorization to be cremated?
It's called a cremation authorization.
So a family, if, say for example, Dad wants to be cremated, but he didn't put anything in writing, and the family wants him under a traditional casket, what happens?
We use a traditional casket.
That's what I
because
thought.
When
Yeah.
death occurs, you may have power of attorney over your loved one.
Yeah.
That ceases at death.
Correct.
And then it goes to who is the next legal next of kin.
Right, okay.
That could be a surviving spouse. That's pretty simple.
Yep.
But when you have 4 children,
Oh my words.
or children that are different parts of
Yes,
the country or
yes.
world, then it becomes a little bit more complicated if cremation is the choice, because now we have to get all these signatures and authorizations.
That
for
is
that.
but as a part, can they do that in ahead of time? Make those
Well,
determinations?
There is a form in the state of Ohio that if you want to be cremated, you can circumvent, well, that maybe isn't the right word, but there is a legal document that you would sign that would override the legal next of kin.
That's very important.
But that's part of the pre-planning
Okay,
process.
that you have in place.
Correct. And that's all we have to have.
Because I can very well imagine if that little document was not in place and you have 4 children and one of them says, I don't care what he said, this is the way I want to go with
Right.
this.
And that works in the other direction too. Say, for example,
Okay.
the deceased wanted very elaborate
Ceremony
ceremony,
and casket.
and very involved and a lot of moving parts and all
Okay.
that. And the children say, we don't want to go through that.
Okay,
They can go in the other direction.
and there you are,
And there we are, and we have to honor what the children want
because he or she did not put that
into play.
into play with the proper legal document. I tell you, there is so much. It's the little foxes. I'll just say that the Bible talks about. It's the little things
Yeah.
that people don't know, and when they get into this process, it can be either a positive lifetime experience, which is your objective, which is to create an environment that is supportive and caring, but ultimately gets this period concluded satisfactorily, or it can be a bit messy.
It can be, and many times, this is a profession that it almost has been taboo over the course of time. No one wants to recognize that of their demise. And so what education that the consumer has is either bad information or not accurate.
Are not accurate.
Right, and so they're misled, especially as it deals with cremation. That's kind of an unknown. They rely on what they hear at the barbecues and the cocktail parties and
Isn't that
church.
people? We are such
On the internet.
Yeah, on the internet.
On the
That's
internet.
different. But I need you to give our viewers your contact information. Give us a phone number, including your area code, because we broadcast all over the United States.
Go to newcomerfuneralhomes.net or .com.
Okay, newcomersfuneralhomes.com.
Yes.
Okay.
And whether we're in 10 states,
Okay.
in several communities, but go to newcomerfuneralhomes.com.
Okay.
And you are going to be able to get all the information about any of our locations. Also on there, which you won't find in all the other providers, is that you will find a complete copy of our general price list,
Oh, that's wonderful.
as well as our casket price list,
Fully disclosed.
fully disclosed.
Ah,
and you're
good.
able to pre-plan online everything and then send it in to us before you come in to
So you'll have the
discuss it.
information.
Absolutely, it's very simple.
That is absolutely
Yeah,
good
we're actually very
information.
proud of our website. It has been used as a model
Well,
in
I
our
went on it.
profession.
It's very good.
Yeah,
It's very, very
yeah,
thorough.
we're awfully proud of that.
I thank you.
But I think that it's the transparency is what we're most proud of.
But I think that we're living in a time where that is required, that people
Absolutely,
have to
yes.
be willing to open up, to tell us the simple things. And I will just say this in concluding today's session, which was excellent, that requirement of transparency is only going to grow.
It has to grow.
Yes, it does.
It has to
It does,
grow.
Jed. It does. It does. So I want to thank all of you that were participants in our viewing today, talking about the whole funeral industry. We just did a broad sweep today. I'm going to have him on again to talk about more specifics. But this gives you a flavor and gives you at least a sense of urgency. I say urgency because we never know when our time is up. We can control a lot of things, but this we cannot control. It's outside of the scope of our understanding. And so again, as a part of my commitment to make sure you're informed and empowered, this is about getting it together and making sure you have that conversation with your parents. If you're baby boomers, don't make assumptions. My gosh, don't make assumptions. So I want to thank you for joining us today.
It was my privilege.
I mean, just wonderful.
It was nice
you
to
were
see
just
you again.
wonderful. It's good
Thank
to
you.
see you again too.
Thank
It
you
is
very much, Michelle.
small world.
Small world is right.
Thank you for being a part of today's segment of The Power of Money. I'm your host, Michelle Graves, affectionately known for over 30 years as the Money Lady, and what an honor and a privilege. Hope I live up to that name. But we'll see you soon. You take care, and as always, God bless you today. Bye-bye.